I really didn't used to be stylish at all. I used to be quite junky. When it looks simple, it looks the best, but to make it look simple is really tricky. Longboarding has taught me is to just slow down. On a Twinnie, you really need to let the wave do the talking. As soon as that rail engages, it's just going to kind of do the work for you. Really just riding what board is matching whatever conditions are in front of you.
Well, welcome to the Bases podcast. We have Anthony Spencer here today. He's a surfer from Western Australia, and I'm super psyched to talk to him because I saw your film Lemonade, and I was just so psyched on the variety of craft that you were riding in the variety of conditions. It was like you go from riding a log in 1 foot waves and like nose riding and ripping pretty impressive turns on it in these tiny waves to like sliding around on a sick little Twinnie, I don't know, 5'7", 5'6". So much flow. And then you go to jump on to riding like what looks like a mid-length compared to that Twinnie. I don't know how long it was, but you know, and you were getting barreled on it. So it's just like the entire spectrum of like surf craft and conditions. And it just got me so psyched because I don't know, that just seems like the dream to be able to do it all, to be able to ride all these different craft. And so, yeah, just wanted to pick your brain and just learn more about you and, you know, your approach to surfing. And I'm sure my community is going to be super psyched to learn about it as well. So first of all, just thanks for joining, Anthony.
Thanks for having me. I can't wait. I love what you're doing and your page, and yeah, I think it's needed within the surf community, and I think everyone always needs a bit of a pointer here, or it's always beneficial to hear other people's stories and point of view too. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Yeah, cool. And you know what? I just want to also mention one, because everybody has to definitely like watch this film. I'll probably put it out in the newsletter and just like so everybody that's part of the community gets it. But one thing that just struck me so much was the final part in it. It's like you and your friend just like sharing this wave. I think she's on a log, you're on like a longer board. And you guys are just looking like having so much fun, you know, and that's what I think surfing is about. There's just like some pure joy to it. The music was perfect. And I was like, dude, this is what it's out. It just made me think of like me sharing a wave with one of my other friends the other day. And I was just like, you know, sun was out, perfect waves. It was great. But anyway, so why don't we kind of start from the beginning? Like, how did you get into surfing? What's the beginning of your story in this journey of yours?
Yeah, so I guess I grew up in Perth, which is 3 hours north of where I am now. There's a few little beach breaks around there, but nothing special. You only get it really good a few times a year. So my dad got me into surfing, and I did all the surf club and lots of surfing lessons back then. And I was always coming down south to where I am now in Margaret River, pretty much every weekend, just for fun. And then I started to get into competitive surfing in the shortboarding side of things, just in the juniors. And then, yeah, I had heaps of fun doing that, but I started to move away from the competition side of things just because of because of the energy I was getting, and I was losing touch with my side of surfing. So yeah, then it progressed me, and then I moved into longboarding, and then that kind of brought back the love for me. So yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting because when I think of WA, I think about the box, you know, I think about like super heavy waves. I think about, you know, just the, you know, grinding, just shortboarding and all that, you know, less, I don't really, I'm sure there are tons of longboarders and all that over there, but that's not what pops to mind just because the typical wave I think about over there is going to be like a pretty heavy wave. So that was one of the things that I thought was really interesting. And so it sounds like you just got a little disenchanted with kind of the competition. It just didn't fit your vibe. Is that what it was, or?
Yeah, it was just a lot of pressure back then. I wasn't at the level that I should have been doing those sorts of competitions. A lot of the people down here, the Groms, they were surfing so well, you know, surfing such good waves every day. And I was in Perth, surfing every morning and afternoon before school, but in like 1 foot slot, you know, at my home break. And I always just dreamt, I was like, man, one day I'm going to move down there and I'm just going to surf in the best waves every day and really improve my surfing. Um, and I
Yeah.
mean, I guess 20 years, 21 years later, I did it, and now I'm down here, and um, it did do exactly that. It really gave me that time to improve, surfing high quality waves every day. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
from that competition, I mean, I started the first time I longboarded, I actually did a longboard competition the day after I tried it for the first time. My friend told me Julian Wilson was a longboard champion, and now he's like obviously he was on tour and ripping, and he's such a successful
Yeah.
surfer. And I was like, man, like if Julian can do it, like let's go. Like I want to give it a go. I kind of drop that drop that ego behind it as well, getting to longboarding. And it was a real
Yeah.
small longboarding community back then. There was only a few of us. All of the divisions, there was probably like under 10 in each division. And then fortunately, like over the years, it's grown so much. And I think the longboarding community here in WA is really is really strong, especially compared to the east coast of Australia, where it's always been really strong, but we're definitely catching up. So yeah, we're coming in hot.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wait, so I'm curious about that. So when you got into longboarding, had you already been riding a shortboard for a long time, or was it kind of both at the same time, or what was that like?
Yeah, I've been shortboarding for a long time. I would have been around 15 maybe, when I first tried the
Hmm.
longboard, and I was surfing since I was 6. So I was surfing, and I was doing a lot of it, and I was pushing myself. Um, and then yeah, the longboarding just kind of, yeah, it came through my friend, and I just thought I'd try something new. But I was
Yeah.
still I was still shortboarding while I was longboarding. I didn't completely drop the shortboard.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. And what was that? What was that like jumping on a log? Going from riding like, a shortboard into riding a board that's twice as long and, single fin, I'm assuming, and, riding it. What was that like?
Yeah, it didn't look great. Like it didn't look like it probably should have. It was a really junky and clunky, and when I was a shortboarder, my coach back then and a lot of my mentors would always be like, Anthony, you need to slow down. I was always quite like trying to do everything on a wave. And I think that's one of the biggest things that longboarding has taught me is to just slow down. Yeah, getting on the longboard, I was always shuffling and not cross stepping. But that just needed time. It takes time and practice to kind of get those sorts of things down. And all of those sorts of things help you flow, and they help each other. But yeah, I could turn the longboard really well, but I just wasn't very good at nose riding. And turning probably still is my forte because I come from that performance background, but that's also been really beneficial for me throughout my longboarding
Yeah.
career, I guess.
Right, right. But how similar is turning a longboard versus turning like a Twinnie? In terms of like riding a log and turning a log.
Yeah, so I guess I'll go
So what is that?
back
Yeah,
because I
yeah, go ahead.
was I was I got into longboarding, and for years I went onto the longboard tour for a few years. I was competing in those events. And I was riding a lot of high performance
Hmm.
longboards. So it was a bit of an easier
Mm.
transition for me because I was riding thrusters on the longboards pretty much. So it wasn't going straight to a single fin. So it was similar in a way that you could get the same drive and all that sort of thing. But I really struggled going back and forth. So when I was riding a longboard, I'd jump back on my shortboard and it'd feel like I'm surfing a toothpick, and I felt like I could probably do any trick in the world, which I couldn't, but it was super loose. And then when I'd get back onto the
Yeah.
longboard, it would be really stiff and I'd be really junky because I'd be trying to turn it like a shortboard and include cross stepping too, but it wouldn't work. So that's when I transitioned. I started riding Twinnies. I just wanted to try it. I was pretty scared to try it, and then I wanted to try it, gave it a go, and then that was a lot more of a similar flow to longboarding, the Twinnies. So it
Huh.
wasn't it wasn't as hard to transition anymore. And that also moved me towards single fin longboarding too. So they're a really similar flow. You're using your rail a lot more. Um, so I could really
Mm.
relate back and forth. And each time I surf either one, I think it helps me improve on both now. But it definitely took me a really long time to go back and forth between them. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like I mean, I've surfed a Twinnie and, going from mostly riding thrusters and quads. The way I would describe them is like they're super fast and it feels great, but then there's just these moments where you're just like eat it on a bottom turn just out of nowhere. You're like, what just happened there? But then sometimes it's like the moments of like just the best feeling ever. Like when you do a turn, it just like has this flow and the speed. I know that the key to those guys is just properly putting them on rail, but they are super loose. And that's why I imagine like riding a log would feel, especially like a single fin log would feel the opposite of that, like just super drivey. But you're saying that they're actually pretty similar. So maybe I just need to ride a log more and figure that out. Oh, but
Similar,
that's super
similar
interesting.
flow, similar momentum, but a lot different. Yeah, they're
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
different.
yeah.
They're
But it
definitely different.
okay. So how about this? Like, what are your key tips for turning a log, and then what are your key tips for turning a twinny?
Yeah. So turning a log, I think you have to have a lot of weight on your back foot and on the tail. You need to be pretty much straight over the fin, at least on top of the fin. And using your hips, using your arms, and using your shoulders helps a lot. You can't just kind of push and turn and it will go. You really need to give it time and be patient with it turning too. Um, and I think the technique is like really important. You need to get that weight distribution right, and then it will kind of all work. But as soon as you try and force a longboard, it just won't do what you want to do. And then a twinny, I find a similar thing. You really need to take it. You need to take it slower. You need to take a step back rather than being on a thruster shortboard. Um, but you can also push it if you're using the rail well. So I think also lots of back foot, and then also keeping that in between of the weight because you don't want to put too much weight forwards if you're doing a top turn because your fins will slide a bit easier. But also that's the fun thing about a 20. You can use those sorts of, that release to kind of make it a bit more fun and also try new things. So yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, so it sounds similar. I mean, in both situations, you're saying, it's all about getting your weight on that back foot as you're going through it, and then putting on rail, and just, what's interesting is when I think about a lot of surfers that ride both logs and shorter boards, I think about like Devin Howard and Bryce Young, and I think I see it a little bit with yours as well. They do when they turn a shorter board. There's this thing they do with their hips where they get really like off axis, right? And I'm sure that that must come from like the mechanics of surfing like a log as well and trying to turn that. I don't know if they get they really focus on getting on rail and their hips are just like they're really shooting their hips out, and so they're kind of like
Hmm.
you know anyway, it's hard to explain. I'd have to show you the exact clip, but that is something I've noticed. That's something I've noticed with people that ride both longer boards and shorter boards. Um,
Yeah.
and then when you're riding a mid length, or are you riding a mid length in those waves, or what are you riding? There was that one section where it was like, barreling overhead, maybe like overhead and a half, something like that. It looks like a much longer board than your 20.
So I mean, yeah, I guess it's a mid-length compared to my 20. My 20s are around 5'6", 5'5", 5'6", and then
Yeah.
that that one. That's one of the MV1s that I ride from Thomas, and it's a 6'3". So it's a bit bigger, but it's
Okay.
also got really hard edge the whole way. Um, and it's kind of got just lots of foam. It's got a bit of a beak nose. It's got a bit of foam in the nose, so it really helps you get in on those bigger days. But it really holds well when it's barreling. I used it all throughout Indo. It was my go-to board, and it was super reliable. It's kind of all the benefits of a mid-length, but then it holds really well. So it's kind of the dream board if you want lots of waves and you maybe you're slacking off a bit with the paddling. Yeah.
That's epic. So it's like you got a quiver that just covers like literally all the bases. Like you got something for when it's pumping, you got something for when it's rippable, you got your twin, and then you also got the log, which you can ride when it's like literally like half a foot or whatever. Like it's tiny, huh?
Yeah. Yep.
And
So that's
that
kind of
just must
how.
open it up and make it so fun. Hey everyone, it's Van. Hopefully you've been enjoying the podcast. Hopefully you've been listening to some good stories, getting some good tips that are helping you improve as a surfer. If so, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review. It'll only take you literally a few seconds, and share it with your friends. That's the best way you can support me so I can continue to create awesome new content for you. So thanks.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of like, I guess, what my thing is, like really just riding what board is matching whatever conditions are in front of you. So like not trying to ride a longboard in like 6 foot waves, which I used to do. I used to try and ride a longboard and everything. But then, adapting,
Yeah.
I'll always have a log on the roof, a Twinnie in the back, and like a mid-length just in case. Especially down here, we've got like a 20-30 minute drive between surf spots sometimes. So you never know what's going to happen. But yeah, really just being ready for any conditions. And also, yeah, super grateful to be able to just surf a different board on a different day and just match those conditions as well.
Yeah, got it. Actually just circling back a little bit, talking about the technique of and the weight distribution of turning, obviously you do have to get on the back foot. And this would be even harder with a log, but like sometimes I feel like when I'm doing my carves, if I get too heavy on the back foot, it'll actually kind of like stall my board because it lifts the nose of the board out so much. Um, do you think about the difference between like how much you put on your front foot versus your back foot? Well,
Yeah, I think with longboarding, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of different movements, whether that's, heel to toe or back foot to front foot weight distribution. But I think throughout the
yeah,
turn, you want to start pushing really heavily on your back foot, and then that slowly starts to transition towards your front when you bring it around, so that nose isn't, yeah, stalling the whole way. And also
yeah,
engaging your opposite rail and then re-engaging the other rail too to keep that flow. But
right.
yeah, I definitely think that that control is really important. And that's what makes it so tricky because there is a lot involved in longboarding. But
Yeah.
it looks simple, and when it looks simple, it looks the best. But to make it look simple is really tricky.
Right, right, for sure. And especially if you are but I feel like your foundation starting with high performance longboards must have been really helpful as well because you're kind of used to it's like the transition from being a thruster guy to riding like a traditional longboard in terms of the mechanics. I gave you like little training wheels so then you could get used to riding a single fin, or am I thinking about that right? Or is it so different from doing a single fin log that it kind of just throws your head for a loop or something?
Yeah, for sure. I got used to riding a performance longboard, which helped me get used to riding a longboard and integrating nose riding and all the cross stepping, and I could still turn it. And then I
Yeah,
slowly transitioned into the more traditional longboard, which all of those things from the high performance really helped. But there was definitely a period there which I struggled a lot transitioning because of the different wave and the
mm,
different flow.
yeah,
But it still helps me to today. Like when I'm trying to turn a longboard, I've just got that extra push, and I think also I'm always wanting to turn still. It keeps it exciting for me, so I'm always trying to push my log to the limits as well, which is really fun.
yeah. That's so fascinating, man. When I see guys on high performance longboards, it always trips me out because they'll be like legit pumping and tic tacking like a 9 foot board, and I'm like, that's insane.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but I guess the mechanics are the same when you're riding a shortboard. But I'm like, how do you move that much foam around? I guess you just got to really push hard with the feet and all that, right?
Mhm.
It's crazy to me though. It's kind of sick
Yeah,
though.
yeah. It's
Um,
pretty crazy what people can do
so
on some
think,
high performance longboards for sure.
yeah, I swear I saw a guy doing an air on a longboard. I'm like, what?
Yeah,
Oh
yeah. I
man,
think I
were
think
you
Taylor
were
pulled a
you able
couple of
to?
them off.
Did you ever try that?
I used to
Yeah.
try them. I used to
Did you ever
try them a
try it?
lot.
Hmm.
But I
Yeah.
never tried it. I don't think enough to pull one off. I was kind of trying it. I knew I probably shouldn't have been trying it. I don't know if it was too frowned upon. So in the back of my mind, I didn't really like keep pushing towards it. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's really tricky what those crew can do on the high performance longboards, and I definitely respect what they can do as well. As much as it might not be appreciated, in today's
Right.
society,
Right.
the way longboarding's going, it is real. They're really talented as well. So yeah.
Yeah, totally. And then how do you think about style then? Because, there's one thing which is just the pure mechanics and technique, right? But then, you go from riding a log, traditional longboarding, which is much more minimalist in terms of your style. You know, how has that influenced, your style and how you think about it when you're riding a Twinnie or, one of your 6.3s or whatever?
Yeah, I really didn't used to be stylish at all. I used to be quite junky even with longboarding. I just couldn't seem to make it look as good as anyone else, which I struggled with it for a long time. But I think what really helped was going to a real traditional longboard, and that really just forced me to slow down and focus on the smaller things rather than trying to do too much. And in doing that, that passed over to my Twinnie, and then I was kind of like, hang on, it feels so nice when you do less on a longboard. Let's try that on a shorter Twinnie or a shortboard. Um, and I think they both integrated really well. And then yeah, the style kind of came from that, just really slowing down, just surfing as much as possible. Um, and then also being fortunate enough to have a mate that was filming me a lot, which I think having that self-awareness of what I looked like when I was doing something, um, more in the functionality side of things, but I think that really helped a lot with the style, for sure.
For sure. Wow. That's incredible. I mean, when I look at your style in your film, it's just like smooth and buttery. I'm just like, wow, that is such good style. And that's there's hope for us, right? If because people are like, oh, style's innate. You can't get better at style. You either have it or you don't. Well, I mean, you definitely have good style, and it sounds like you worked on it, right? It wasn't just like this natural thing that happened. Um,
Yeah, no, I appreciate
so
that. But definitely worked on it, and I think being influenced from people, I think watching other surfers is really important. And really trying to have that awareness when you're in water to be working on things and just slowing down. And just surfing for surfing, I think that helps a lot of the style side of things.
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, one more question I had on the whole Twinny thing. Like, what's it? How would you describe your difference in approach to surfing a wave, riding a Twinny versus riding your traditional shortboard?
I think you really have to draw a different line. You can't just go top to bottom. Um, you really need to set your rail before you can start engaging a turn, and you need to be flowing out of that turn to kind of go into the next one. I think with the 20 also, you can gain too much speed a lot of the time as well, and it can be tricky to wipe it off. Whereas a thruster, I think you've just got a lot more drive, but you don't get so much down the line speed. So with the 20, kind of really regulating the speed is important. But when you need the speed, you can get the speed as well. Where on a thruster, I just feel like I never could. Maybe that was because I was riding less foam, um, or because the back fin, I don't know, drags too much.
Yeah,
I'm not too sure, but
right.
you definitely have a lot more speed on a 20, and just you just get a lot more flow. Once you really dial in a 20, you just feel a lot more flow for sure.
For sure. I mean, it looks like it from watching your clips. And it's this question that I have for myself because, like I said, I had this 20, and when it was good, it was amazing. It was a Neil Purchase Jr. Apex twin. And when it was good, it was amazing. It felt like
Yeah.
amazing. But then there would just be all these moments where I would just blow it on like the simplest things where I'm just like, oh, this is tripping me out, right? So then I ended up putting like a center fin into it, just to stabilize it because I was going to Hawaii. So I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to just ride a Twinnie in like pumping waves. So I just put like a little trailer in it and that stabilized it. But then I feel like now I'm not riding like a proper Twinnie, you know? So what do you think is, because it's tricky, right? Because you got more speed, which is the most important ingredient when you're surfing, but then you just have to be that much more precise with your technique. So would you describe a Twinnie, is it better to learn on a thruster and a quad and develop your technique, or do you think it's better to jump onto the Twinnie where you're just going to get that immediate speed, but then you got to learn how to use your rails and all that properly? What's your view on that?
That's a tricky one. I think thrusters can teach you a lot, and they can be a lot more forgiving at times, for sure. But I think with a thruster, you have the opportunity to do what you want on a wave a lot of the time. You can really push turns and push through sections or do a floater whenever. But on a 20, you really need to let the wave do the talking and do what the wave allows you to do and not force anything, or it just won't work. You really need to just stay in the momentum of the wave, and if a section's coming, you either, go over it or under it, or you don't force anything. And I think that's the most important thing for me.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. After that one experience, I was like, okay, I love this board, but I'm gonna keep the center thing in the center fin in it just so it's a little more predictable. But
Yeah.
I'm about to do a little trip down in February, and I have my buddy's twin that he shaped, and I'm thinking about bringing it. And I'm like, but there's a big part of me that wants to experiment and just like just give it another go. This thing's gonna be kind
Yeah.
of trippy. It's like an ASIM as well. It
Sick.
looks sick, but I'm also like, am I just gonna be like eating shit the whole time? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll see what I decide to do there. Yeah.
Yeah. I have to admit that I've tried I've tried to ride a thruster multiple times over the
Hmm.
past couple of years since I've only been riding Twinnies, and I really struggled to go back to a
Yeah.
thruster. It was actually really different. I think just not used to the amount of drive that it gives you is really trippy. So I've just I'd try a mate's board and I'd be like, all right, give me back my 20. I want to get back on it. It's too much fun. But yeah.
Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah, that back and forth between like alternative craft and traditional like high performance craft. It's
Mm.
interesting. I have a buddy, he's a really good surfer. He normally rides like this five, I don't know, 5'2", whatever, and it's like a twin plus trailer. It's like wide outline but pulled in tail. It's like, pretty alti board, alternative board. But now he's like, I kind of want to get on more traditional high performance craft, and I'm just like, that's going to be interesting to see what happens in
Mm.
that transition.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, but one of the things that I also noticed from just poking around, because when you think like longboarders, you're just like, and people that ride Twinnies, you're just like, all right, this dude's super chill, hippy dippy. And then I was going back on your Instagram and I saw you like just pumping off these like single leg pistol squats. So you're also like this hardcore trainer dude as well. So I thought that was an interesting dichotomy. So like, tell us about some of this training you do. I mean, is that what you need to do to turn a log? You need to be able to do like 20 single leg squats in a row, or what's the deal?
Yeah, I think back in the day when I was competing a lot more and doing the tour competitions, especially high performance, I put a lot of my focus, I'd say about 80% of my focus into training and not so much into my surfing, more just because of where I was living at the time. I didn't have the opportunity to surf as much, so I would just train all the time. And that led to me, really finding the love for like fitness and staying fit, and which has helped me and I still integrate into my life every single day now. But also recovery as well. I would do a lot of mobility work, and a company I was sponsored by back then, BlackRoll, they do a lot of that mobility gear, which really helped me, and I still use it to this day. And I live by it. I don't know what it is with my body. Maybe it's just my genes, but I really need to stay on top of that stuff, or I just start fading away. Whether I'm traveling for a
Mm.
long time, I'll need to do a bit of a workout or something just to bring my muscles back, or I just start to fade away a little. And yeah, really staying on top of that. I'm really about preventing injury rather than getting an injury and then dealing with it. Um, because I've had a few and I've just hated it. So I'm always staying on top of that and always doing my little warm up before a surf, which sometimes is pretty cringy for some people to watch, but it's only short and it's not too painful. So
You
yeah,
haven't gotten featured on Kook of the Day yet with your
not just yet.
workout.
Not just yet. I've had a few people, maybe take a couple videos, but I think it's something that actually is really important. And if you do a warm up in
Yeah.
the first wave you get to bomb, you're ready to go. You don't need a couple waves to warm up. So who knows? That's sometimes the best wave of the session.
Hell yeah. No, no. I mean, I totally think warming up and getting your body properly primed makes a lot of sense. So let's dig into this because I think this is fascinating because it sounds like this is something you really struggled with, and that's when generally people find the best solution. So like, what what kind of training has really made the biggest impact on your surfing? Like, what is it? Those single leg squats, or what's been really key for you?
I think it's really just keeping your body like activated is the most important. I just when I go to the gym, which is not too often, it's a couple times a week or once every now and then, I just do like a whole body workout, just random stuff. A lot of cardio I find is really important. As soon as I can get on an assault bike, I get on that. I find that's the one thing I've found that kind of transitions into surfing when you get really, really gassed out from a few wipeouts or hold downs. I think the assault bike gives you the same sensation. It just absolutely cooks you.
Huh?
Um, but
What is
yeah,
the
just keep
what's
it.
an assault bike?
It's the one where you like move your arms and also like riding a bike at the same time. It's pretty intense, but you have to search
Ah,
it up.
got
I'm
it.
not too. I don't want to do the live demonstration, but no, I think just keeping your body active, but then also the other side of it is just like keeping you mobile and looking after your body. So I just do, lots of stretching and I use foam rollers a lot and all those trigger ball sorts of things because I had a history of pretty bad back problems where I wouldn't be able to walk because my back's so inflamed.
Oh man.
So I just have to stay onto it, but also grateful for it because it keeps me healthy, keeps me aware of my body. Um, and I learned a lot about my body and what benefits what when I was in my little deep training phase, my little fit phase. But and that's still I'm still grateful for that today because I integrate that into every day. And it's I think it's really important. And just for
Yeah.
longevity as well, keeping your body, moving, so you can just keep surfing longer and longer.
Yeah. Man, lower back stuff, that is the worst. Like what was going on with your back and how did you fix it?
Yeah, so I think it really got triggered when I was longboarding a lot and I hadn't shortboarded for a while and I'd jump onto a shortboard. Just that extra arch in my back would really pinch my lower back. And also just having weak glutes, I think that was the biggest problem. That put a lot of strain into my hips and then also into my back. So had to put a lot of work into that through Pilates and also just self training and also like muscle release and things like that.
Right. Maybe that's where the
Yeah.
single leg pistol squat comes in, right, to activate those glutes.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I've had some lower back issues. I think what I mean, I'm not sure exactly what happened. I'm sure there was like imbalances before from like I don't know. But I remember also what kind of brought it to a head was I was surfing in Puerto Rico and I got slammed on the reef and it just like hit me right in the small of my back. And then when I came up from it, I could barely walk. And it felt like one side of my back had seized up. And then
Mhm.
like after that, I always felt like off and I didn't realize why. And it like aching in my lower back.
Mm.
So I was trying all sorts of stuff for it. And so obviously I started working on my posterior chain a bunch. And then I saw this one PT and she was like, dude, your hips are uneven. And I was like, what? And apparently like one hip was like higher than the other. And I think one side had tightened because of that, that slam. And then that was throwing my entire posterior chain off. And then imbalances with my back off, so I had to fix that. And then once I fixed that, like my lower back pain pretty much went away, and it was just trippy. I
Wow.
was like, wow, it's because I have uneven hips.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I have single leg squats. That's something I do as well. I feel like it's so key, you know.
Yeah, I'm not too
And
sure if I
my
can still
body as
do the
well.
single leg squats.
Oh yeah, dude, you were getting low. Like your ass was like on the floor, and you were coming back up. I
Yeah,
was like, this
I
guy's a
haven't
pro. Shoot.
I haven't tried them for a few years now, so I'm not too sure. I stay clear of those gnarly sorts of exercises, but I think the lower back sorts of things in surfing is super common, and I think there probably should be a lot more education
Yeah.
behind it because I'm always hearing about people complaining. I mean, that and your shoulders, of course, but it's always seems like a simple solution, but for each person, it seems like a little bit of a different way of solving the problem. So it's always tricky as well.
Well, turning that log is all the single leg squat you need, right?
I think so, yeah.
I'm sure that that you're just doing it over and over again. That's your single leg squat there. I mean, here's a question: like when you're turning a log, like how hard are you pushing?
I think it's not so much of like a burst of pressure. It's more of like
Right.
you're sustaining the pressure throughout the turn. And also you're trying not to overdo it because I think that's what longboarding's about is really keeping it simple, but sometimes you want to push it a bit harder. But even then, I think it really comes down to your weight distribution and your timing rather than how hard you're pushing. So like if you're on a fatter wave and you
Yeah.
push too hard, it's not going to work. But if you're in a more bowly wave, as soon as that rail engages, it's just going to kind of do the work for you. So I think the technique is really important.
Cool. And one thing I wanted to ask you about is what is it like riding for Thomas? I know you ride a lot of his boards. I think you ride everything from his logs to his fishes. It must be so cool to work with such a talented shaper. Like, tell me about, what it's been like riding his boards.
Yeah, I first started off riding his boards. I just went into their store in Noosa Heads and I just bought some secondhand boards off their rack and just really connected with them. It took a while to get used to those sorts of boards, but I think I took about three. I was frothing so hard and I took them back over to WA and they really clicked. I wasn't sure if they were going to work in the bigger stuff as well, but they held up really well. The quality of them's insane, and each board that I ride just seems to have a similar flow to them, and that's been so beneficial. And ever since I've been fortunate enough to work more closely with Thomas, I've been able to kind of broaden that variety of boards too. Um, and yeah, each board seems to just have its own little thing that goes really well. Um, and they all work together and yeah, it's been an actual honor working with him and it was one of my dreams. I think I said I was going to quit surfing if I ever got sponsored by Thomas, but that didn't happen. I didn't think it was the best idea when it happened, so I stuck with it. Yeah.
Nice, nice. And it
Yeah.
was interesting because I interviewed Ryan Lovelace and he said something to the effect of like the ultimate dream is if somebody steps on my surfboard and then they say they get this specific sensation. And for him, the sensation that he wants his riders to all feel is like this ball bearing like looseness combined with speed. Is there a feeling that you get? I mean, I think you mentioned it, but like what is the feeling you get from riding Thomas's boards? What makes them magic for you?
I think I feel just really comfortable on them, and kind of myself when I'm surfing them. I really feel like I can surf the way I want to surf on those boards, in most waves, which I think has been one of the biggest things that's helped me improve my surfing is just being confident on my craft, um, and also allowing me to surf a lot of different craft and being comfortable on all those different craft, whether it's, swapping two boards in one session, or something like that. And I think that's what has been the biggest thing for me for sure.
Mm. And so what is it about the boards that makes you comfortable, I guess, right? Is it there like a similarity in the feel so that when you switch from a longboard to a twin, it's not too difficult of a transition, or expand on that for me if you could.
Yeah, I think that they're just I think I'm comfortable with how they're made, and I really feel like I can push them and myself to the limit without having to worry about something breaking or overdoing it or something like that. And if I push too hard, the board won't let me, and then I know, okay, hold back, try something new, or try a different way of doing it. I think the boards really direct you in a good way, but they also let you do what you want in a way and have your freedom. So, yeah, it's a tricky one, but they really just all work. I always don't want to be too much of like a salesy person, but I tell a lot of my mates, and I'm just like, you just have to try them because they've just got this little magic behind them, and they just let you be who you want in the water, I think. Yeah.
Oh man, sounds like I gotta try Thomas. That sounds epic.
For sure. Game life changing.
Awesome. Well, I think this is pretty much all I set out to cover. Anything else you want to say to the, put out there into the world? You got anything exciting going on? What's next? Are you making any new films? Competing any at all? What's going on with you?
Yeah, so that Lemonade film actually came up really last minute. A friend was doing a premiere of their film and magazine down here, so I actually smashed that together in one day and tried not to use these clips that we've been trying to make a little movie on as well over the last year. So it was really interesting. I used some of the clips that have already been like released and stuff, but it was a really good momentum to push us into the next thing. So around April, March next year, or this year, sorry, we'll be releasing another little film, a bit longer, so hopefully like 10 to 15 minutes, and that'll cover heaps more of like our Indo travels that we did last year, throughout Sumbawa, and then also a lot more back home as well, and also a lot more about back home rather than just revolving around surfing, which is really exciting. So we're still trying to get some stuff for that together. It's always a big thing to think about, but it'll be cool, and it's really fun to make something a bit longer and a bit more meaning, than just quick little Instagram reels sometimes. So really looking forward to getting that
Right.
out into the world. Yeah.
Yeah, that's epic. And I mean, I have to say the quality of the filming is top notch. Obviously, the surfing is incredible as well, but yeah, just the way everything was put together, it looks really good. So definitely psyched for you guys. I can't wait to have that come out. But yeah, thanks for joining, man.
No, no worries at all. Thanks so much for having me. And
Hey everyone, it's Van. Hopefully you've been enjoying the podcast. Hopefully you've been listening to some good stories, getting some good tips that are helping you improve as a surfer. If so, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review. It'll only take you literally a few seconds, and share it with your friends. That's the best way you can support me so I can continue to create awesome new content for you. So thanks.